She was an orphan, not a warrior, not a prophet, not a politician, just a young Jewish girl hiding her identity inside the most powerful empire on earth. And then one law was signed, one piece of paper, one date on a calendar, and suddenly every Jew, men, women, children, was marked for death. Esther had two options: stay silent and survive alone, or speak up and possibly die. This is not a fairy tale. This is the story of how courage stopped a genocide. As you listen to this story, ask yourself, what would you have done if staying silent kept you safe, but speaking up could cost your life? Our story begins in Susa, the winter capital of the Persian Empire, around 480 BC. This was the superpower of the ancient world. King Xerxes, called Ahasuerus in Hebrew, ruled over 127 provinces stretching from India to Ethiopia. His empire was vast, wealthy, and ruthless. But hidden within this empire was a people who didn't belong: the Jews. Decades earlier, Babylon had conquered Jerusalem and dragged God's people into exile. Then Persia conquered Babylon. And now the descendants of those Jewish exiles live scattered throughout the Persian Empire. Most had never seen Jerusalem. They were born in captivity, raised in a foreign land, surrounded by pagan culture. And one of these exiles was a young girl named Hadassah. Her Hebrew name meant myrtle, a symbol of peace and righteousness. But everyone knew her by her Persian name, Esther. She was beautiful, but more than that, she was alone. Esther 2:7 tells us, Mordecai had a cousin named Hadassah, whom he had brought up because she had neither father nor mother. This young woman, who was also known as Esther, had a lovely figure and was beautiful. Mordecai had taken her as his own daughter when her father and mother died. Orphaned, adopted. Raising her was Mordecai, her older cousin, a Jewish official who served at the king's gate. Mordecai was wise. He knew the dangers of being Jewish in Persia, so he gave Esther one critical instruction: don't reveal your identity. Don't let anyone know you're Jewish. This wasn't shame. This was survival. In a world where your ethnicity could get you killed, sometimes secrecy was the only protection you had. So Esther lived quietly, a beautiful girl in a vast empire, unknown, unnoticed. If you've ever felt invisible, forgotten, or like your life started at a disadvantage, don't tune out yet. This story was written for people like you. King Xerxes had just divorced his queen, Vashti. She had publicly refused his command during a drunken banquet, humiliating him in front of his nobles. So the king's advisors came up with a plan, a kingdom-wide search for a new queen. Esther 2:3-4. Let the king appoint commissioners in every province of his realm to bring all these beautiful young women into the harem at the citadel of Susa. Let beauty treatments be given to them. Then let the young woman who pleases the king be queen instead of Vashti. This wasn't a fairy tale. This was conscription. Beautiful young women were taken from their homes, willing or not, and brought to the king's harem. For 12 months, they would undergo beauty treatments. Then, one by one, they would spend a single night with the king. If he liked you, you became queen. If not, you became a forgotten concubine. And Esther, young, beautiful, and Jewish, was swept up in the search. Esther 2:8-9. When the king's order and edict had been proclaimed, many young women were brought to the citadel of Susa and put under the care of Haggai. Esther also was taken to the king's palace and entrusted to Haggai, who had charge of the harem. She pleased him and won his favor. Imagine Esther's fear, torn from Mordecai, placed in a harem with dozens of other young women, all competing for one position. But something about Esther stood out, not just her beauty, her character. Esther 2:9. Haggai was pleased with her and showed her favor. He assigned to her 7 female attendants selected from the king's palace and moved her and her attendants into the best place in the harem. Esther had favor, and she was wise enough not to flaunt it. For 12 months, she endured the beauty treatments, 6 months with oil of myrrh, 6 months with perfumes and cosmetics. All while keeping her secret, she was Jewish. Finally, Esther's turn came. Esther 2:15. When the turn came for Esther to go to the king, she asked for nothing other than what Haggai, the king's eunuch, who was in charge of the harem, suggested. While other women loaded themselves with jewelry and extravagant clothing, Esther took only what Hegai recommended. She trusted the wisdom of the one who knew the king's preferences. And when she entered the king's presence, Esther 2:17 tells us, "Now the king was attracted to Esther more than to any of the other women, and she won his favor and approval more than any of the other virgins. So he set a royal crown on her head and made her queen instead of Vashti, an orphan, a Jew, a girl with no political power, no family connections, no royal blood, and now queen of Persia." But Esther kept her secret. Esther 2:20. Esther had kept secret her family background and nationality, just as Mordecai had told her to do. Meanwhile, Mordecai continued serving at the king's gate, and one day he overheard something dangerous. Esther 2:21-22. Two of the king's officers, who guarded the doorway, became angry and conspired to assassinate King Xerxes. But Mordecai found out about the plot and told Queen Esther, who in turn reported it to the king, giving credit to Mordecai. The plot was investigated, the conspirators were executed, and Mordecai's name was recorded in the royal chronicles as the man who saved the king's life. But Mordecai received no reward, no recognition, no promotion, just his name in a book. And for now, that seemed like the end of the story. But God, who is never mentioned by name in the book of Esther, was working behind the scenes. Mordecai's good deed was about to become the key to everything. After these events, King Xerxes promoted a man named Haman to the highest position in the empire. Esther 3:1. King Xerxes honored Haman, son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, elevating him and giving him a seat of honor higher than that of all the other nobles. Haman was an Agagite, a descendant of Agag, king of the Amalekites, the ancient enemies of Israel. And now this enemy of the Jews was the most powerful man in Persia. The king's command was clear. All the royal officials at the king's gate knelt down and paid honor to Haman, for the king had commanded this concerning him. Everyone bowed. Everyone showed reverence. Everyone except Mordecai. Haman wasn't just a government official. He demanded worship, and Mordecai refused. Day after day, Mordecai stood while everyone else bowed. The other officials questioned him. "Why do you disobey the king's command?" Esther 3:4. Day after day, they spoke to him, but he refused to comply. Therefore, they told Haman about it to see whether Mordecai's behavior would be tolerated, for he had told them he was a Jew. And when Haman found out, rage consumed him. Esther 3:5-6. When Haman saw that Mordecai would not kneel down or pay him honor, he was enraged. Yet having learned who Mordecai's people were, he scorned the idea of killing only Mordecai. Instead, Haman looked for a way to destroy all Mordecai's people, the Jews, throughout the whole kingdom of Xerxes. One man's refusal, one man's faithfulness, and Haman's response? Genocide. Haman went to the king with a plan. Esther 3:8-9. Then Haman said to King Xerxes, "There is a certain people dispersed among the peoples in all the provinces of your kingdom who keep themselves separate. Their customs are different from those of all other people, and they do not obey the king's laws. It is not in the king's best interest to tolerate them. If it pleases the king, let a decree be issued to destroy them, and I will give 10,000 talents of silver to the government administrators to put into the royal treasury." Notice the manipulation. Haman didn't say, "the Jews." He made them sound like a threat, different, disobedient, dangerous, and he offered the king a bribe, 10,000 talents of silver, an astronomical sum. The king, either indifferent or ignorant, agreed. Esther 3:10-11. So the king took his signet ring from his finger and gave it to Haman. "Keep the money," the king said to Haman, "and do with the people as you please." With the king's signet ring, Haman issued an irrevocable decree. On the 13th day of the 12th month, all Jews, young and old, women and children, were to be annihilated, killed, plundered. Esther 3:13. Dispatches were sent by couriers to all the king's provinces with the order to destroy, kill, and annihilate all the Jews. The decree went out, and Esther 3:15 says, "The king and Haman sat down to drink, but the city of Susa was bewildered." While Haman and the king celebrated, an entire people faced extermination. And Esther, safe in the palace, hidden behind her royal position, had no idea. Stay with me here, because what happens next proves that power doesn't always win, but courage often does. When Mordecai learned of the decree, Esther 4:1 tells us, he tore his clothes, put on sackcloth and ashes, and went out into the city wailing loudly and bitterly. All across the empire, Jews mourned, fasted, wept. But Mordecai positioned himself at the entrance to the king's gate, where Esther's servants would see him. Esther 4:4. When Esther's eunuchs and female attendants came and told her about Mordecai, she was in great distress. She sent clothes for him to put on instead of his sackcloth, but he would not accept them. Esther was confused. Why was Mordecai mourning? So she sent her trusted servant, Hathach, to find out. And Mordecai told him everything. He gave him a copy of the decree, and he gave him a message for Esther. Go into the king's presence to beg for mercy and plead with him for her people. But Esther's response reveals the impossible situation she faced. Esther 4:11. All the king's officials and the people of the royal provinces know that for any man or woman who approaches the king in the inner court without being summoned, the king has but one law, that they be put to death unless the king extends the gold scepter to them and spares their lives. But 30 days have passed since I was called to go to the king. Let that sink in. Even the queen couldn't approach the king without being summoned. If she entered his throne room uninvited, she would be executed, unless the king extended his golden scepter. And it had been 30 days since Xerxes had called for her. She was already out of favor. Esther was saying, if I do this, I'll probably die. But Mordecai's reply shattered her illusion of safety. For such a time as this. Esther 4:13-14. Do not think that because you are in the king's house, you alone of all the Jews will escape. For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place, but you and your father's family will perish. And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this? Read that again. For such a time as this. Mordecai was telling Esther, your position isn't a coincidence. Your beauty, your favor, your crown, it was all for this moment. God didn't give you a platform so you could stay silent when your people need you. If you won't speak up, God will save his people another way, but you and your family will be lost. And then the challenge, who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this? Esther had a choice, use her influence or lose everything anyway. And in that moment, the orphan girl became a woman of courage. This is where fear and faith collide, and only one gets the final word. Esther 4:15-16. Then Esther sent this reply to Mordecai, go, gather together all the Jews who are in Susa and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. I and my attendants will fast as you do. When this is done, I will go to the king, even though it is against the law. And if I perish, I perish. If I perish, I perish. 3 words, a death sentence accepted, a mission chosen over safety. Esther wasn't naive. She knew the risk. She knew the law. She knew she might die. But she also knew silence was no longer an option. For 3 days, the Jews fasted. Esther fasted. They prayed, though the book never mentions prayer or God by name. But the fasting tells us they were crying out to the God who sees, the God who saves. And on the 3rd day, Esther put on her royal robes and walked toward the throne room. Esther 5:1-2. On the 3rd day, Esther put on her royal robes and stood in the inner court of the palace, in front of the king's hall. The king was sitting on his royal throne in the hall, facing the entrance. When he saw Queen Esther standing in the court, he was pleased with her and held out to her the gold scepter that was in his hand. So Esther approached and touched the tip of the scepter. She lived. The king extended the scepter. Esther's beauty, her favor, her timing, it all worked. And the king, pleased to see her, said, "What is it, Queen Esther? What is your request? Even up to half the kingdom, it will be given you." But Esther didn't blurt out her plea. She was strategic. Esther 5:4, "If it pleases the king, let the king, together with Haman, Come today to a banquet I have prepared for him. A banquet, not a confrontation, not yet. The king agreed, and Haman was thrilled, honored to be invited to a private banquet with the king and queen. At the first banquet, the king again asked, "What is your petition? It will be given you. What is your request? Even up to half the kingdom, it will be granted." But again, Esther delayed. Esther 5:7-8. If the king regards me with favor, and if it pleases the king to grant my petition and fulfill my request, let the king and Haman come tomorrow to the banquet I will prepare for them. Then I will answer the king's question. Why the delay? Why 2 banquets? Because Esther was building suspense, increasing the king's curiosity, and giving God time to move. And that night something happened that Esther couldn't have planned. Esther 6:1. That night the king could not sleep, so he ordered the book of the Chronicles, the record of his reign, to be brought in and read to him. The king couldn't sleep, so he had the royal records read aloud. And what did they read? The account of Mordecai saving the king's life. Esther 6:3. The king asked, "What honor and recognition has Mordecai received for this?" "Nothing has been done for him," his attendants answered. At that exact moment, Haman arrived at the palace to ask the king's permission to hang Mordecai on the gallows he'd already built. But the king spoke first. Haman's humiliation. Esther 6:6. The king said to Haman, "What should be done for the man the king delights to honor?" Haman, thinking the king meant him, suggested the highest honor imaginable. Dress him in royal robes, seat him on the king's horse, have a noble lead him through the city proclaiming, "This is what is done for the man the king delights to honor." The king loved it. Esther 6:10. Go at once, the king commanded Haman. Get the robe and the horse and do just as you have suggested for Mordecai the Jew, who sits at the king's gate. Do not neglect anything you have recommended. Haman's face must have gone white. He, the man who wanted Mordecai dead, had to honor him publicly, lead him through the streets, proclaim his greatness. It was the ultimate humiliation, and it was just beginning. That evening, Haman and the king attended Esther's second banquet. Again, the king asked, "Queen Esther, what is your petition? What is your request?" And this time, Esther spoke. Esther 7:3-4. If I have found favor with you, your majesty, and if it pleases you, grant me my life. This is my petition, and spare my people. This is my request. For I and my people have been sold to be destroyed, killed and annihilated. The king was shocked. Who is he? Where is he? The man who has dared to do such a thing? Esther 7:6. Esther said, "An adversary and enemy, this vile Haman." Haman, sitting right there, was exposed. The king, enraged, left the room, and when he returned, he found Haman falling on Esther's couch, begging for mercy. The king misinterpreted it. Will he even molest the queen while she is with me in the house? And one of the attendants spoke up. A pole reaching to a height of 50 cubits stands by Haman's house. He had it set up for Mordecai. The king's response? Esther 7:9-10. The king said, "Impale him on it." So they impaled Haman on the pole he had set up for Mordecai. Esther 9:22 tells us that Mordecai and Esther established an annual celebration called Purim because Haman had cast Pur, the lot, to determine the day to destroy the Jews. But God turned their mourning into joy, their sorrow into celebration. And to this day, Jewish people celebrate Purim, remembering the orphan queen who risked everything to save her people. Lesson from the story. Esther's story teaches us, God is always working, even when his name isn't mentioned, even when you can't see him. Your position, your influence, your platform, it's not an accident. It's for such a time as this. And sometimes the most faithful thing you can do is speak up when staying silent feels safer. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's choosing to act despite it. Esther said, "If I perish, I perish." What in your life requires that kind of courage? Where is God calling you to speak, to stand, to risk? Maybe it's for such a time as this. If this story challenged you, share it. Comment below. What's your "for such a time as this" moment? and subscribe for more stories of courage, faith, and divine providence. And make sure you check other videos in the channel page. God bless you.